Can't hear you, Kat. There you go.
Can you hear me?
I can hear you now. Yep. Can you hear me?
Great. Yeah, I can. Good morning, Bob. I'm gonna go off video now. How are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm
Kat,
sick. Go ahead.
We're going to be joined by Verinda Birdsong. She's recently hired by the department. She's going to be the new board coordinator and be taking over
Nice.
the boards. Yeah. So she's going to be, shadowing on all the, covering all the, shadowing all the coordinators now. Just to hang on.
To learn. I know. Did you get
Yeah,
my
to learn.
email about Christina and Stevie joining?
Yeah, we're recording right now. This automatically went to recording, which is fine. Yes, I did. I did get the email. Christina and Stephen Della Gastina.
Yeah. Thank you,
Yep.
Bob.
You're welcome.
Good morning.
Good morning.
And hi, Kat, and hi, Marcia.
Good morning, John. I just want to let you know it's being recording. It automatically.
Yeah, John, it kicked on when I logged in this morning automatically.
Not a
Is that
problem.
you?
Okay.
Not a problem. Marcia,
Good morning.
Good morning.
I'll chair, but I'll let you lead on going through the final points, since you not only manage this process, but also were head for the 99% there last time around.
All right. I'm trying to pull, I had that email pulled up.
Yeah.
Let me just,
Yeah, it's I've got it here too. It's not the largest font, but it's fine. Morning, Tim.
Good morning. How's
Morning,
everyone?
Tim.
Yep.
Good, thank you.
Morning, Pete.
Good morning.
Morning, Verinda.
Good morning. How are you, Bob?
Good, thank you.
Great.
John
Yes.
and members of the board, like just a couple things. We are recording. It automatically went into the recording mode. I could stop it, but I don't know if it's going to disrupt the cloud recording, but I'd like to introduce Verinda Birdsong. Verinda is recently hired by the department. She's going to be the board coordinator and will be taking over down the road for the boards the boards and commissions that the handles. Hi, Carla.
Hello, everyone. Good
So good
morning.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Welcome, Verinda.
Thank
This is
you.
the board. So she's covering the meetings now, kind of shadowing all the different boards and councils to kind of get the ropes, how things are going. But she will be the coordinator.
Oh, okay.
And what was the term for Frank? Was he the coordinator or was he?
So Frank Fernelli
Well-
was the legal supervisor and DCP's legal unit. So no, Frank was, and I think actually the chairman had invited me to speak a bit more about procedurally kind of how we're staffed up later on whenever it's appropriate. But I'm hoping to speak a little bit more about Frank's role and how we're configured now to support your board.
Good morning, Julianne.
Good morning.
Morning, Julianne.
Good morning.
Okay. So we're waiting for Daniel. Oh boy, 2, 3, and Martha.
Well, I'm sorry that you're joining us today when we're not at our friendliest, Verinda.
Well, that's okay. I'm taking the deep dive, and I've been with the state for over 12 years, and I've done lots of work supporting Connecticut citizens with Department of Labor, and many years ago, state judiciary as a court monitor, working my way through central. And I worked at the federal level, the local level, another state agency. I'm a military veteran, so.
Which branch?
Army.
I was kind of hoping Navy, but hey.
Oh, you Navy guys get me every time. I'm telling you, I met one of your fellow soldiers just a few days ago at comptrollers, and I was like, listen, remember, I was, Army's first. We fought the Revolutionary War. I think the Navy too, but so.
Unusual for Daniel not to be here early. And Carla sometimes has trouble getting on.
She's here.
Yeah, I was just thinking, yeah, sometimes I have trouble getting on, so I'm the last one.
Wonderful.
Okay,
I
Martha,
wonder-
you're right here first, Carla.
yeah, do
And
we have a,
somebody called Daniel and maybe he's having trouble getting on or something.
yeah,
Was-
Martha gets
was he
called into
supposed to
court
be
at the last minute a lot, so.
Yeah, I know.
I think we have a quorum though. And it is 10:04, and since this is an important meeting to complete, it'd be nice to have a full board, but I think that we do have a quorum, correct?
We do.
Okay, then at let's see, 10:04, I'll call the meeting to order, and the meeting has one official agenda item on it, and we'll have a little bit of brief discussion afterwards, and that is completion of case 2022-1. And I'm going to turn the floor over to Marcia, who worked this through, et cetera, and with the assistance of the AG's office, clarified the questions that the board had before making the determination final last time. So,
Okay.
Marcia?
We had about 5 questions, and the first one had to do with civil penalties, and you all should have gotten the email from me that gave the long answers. I'll give you the short answers. As far as the $50,000 cap, when we tried to multiply some of these things out, we were getting higher than 50,000, and the short answer is that the fairest reading of the statutes is that there's a 50,000 total cap. That if there was some financial statements being prepared and we didn't get any evidence that there were, that we could go for a criminal conviction and a sentence separate from the civil penalties. Our second question, that we had asked if him to prepare a notification to his clients, and the last time where there was some with this person where there was some penalties involved, we were ignored. That and they had thought that there is not a problem with him giving us a list. I'm just trying to get the short answer here. That and the client list should not, that we would have an argument that the client list would not be subject to FOI. That, but there isn't a specific FOI case right now that we're guaranteed of that they would just be willing to fight that. That we had said that a number of years ago that this man was required to do other things if he ignores us, and he ignored them as best we can tell. And what if he doesn't send the listing to his clients? Can we do something that concerning making that public? And so they would recommend that we somehow publish the information through our license system or through the website would be the best way to do it, and work through getting more. We could get the information out, but maybe not through a newspaper or anything. And then can we add that payment to this case that he didn't pay last time? No, but there are some vehicles that we can use going to the Superior Court for collections that it doesn't look like we used the last time. And then the response time, that we would want to do it within 90 days of the closure of the evidence. So those were the answers to our questions.
Sorry. Is there anybody who, having read the email from the AG, has any further comments or questions on the response? Okay, hearing none, I think it would be appropriate to move to a motion. And I'm not sure whether the most convenient way would be step by step or one overall motion. But if you're ready, I can't make a motion, as you know. If you're ready with that, Marcia, I think we're ready to move forward. I think the
If just give me an email, a minute, because I'm trying to pull up what we had talked about here.
that is the problem with Zoom. When you're meeting in person, you have the paper in front of you, and it's easy to access other than moving things around screen and opening and closing.
All right. My screen's decided to act up on me, as of course, right as we're doing this. All right, so we had a draft motion that a draft of the items, and he let me know about 3 minutes ago that I was going to be in charge of this. So I'm working hard. And,
I was scared if I went beyond that, I would be guilty of calling a meeting without it being open to the public. So
Oh, yeah.
So I think that we had a draft that we had worked with before. And I don't think that these answers have changed anything. I'm just looking quickly to see if these answers have changed anything in our the proposal that we had. We had limited it to 50,000. So I think that unless anyone else sees something else that would have changed from what we had said before, I think we're good with our proposed final decision. So I will make a motion that our proposed final decision as of our meeting on May 10th, 2022 be approved.
if you
I'll
have it right. Somebody spoke?
Martha Triplett, I'll second the motion.
Oh, thank you, Martha. We didn't say. We're spread across too far off the top. I didn't see you come in.
Oh,
We have a motion and a second. Do we have any discussion?
Could you just read the motion if it's not too long? before
Sure.
we vote?
I think it would be appropriate to do if any member wants it anyway, long or not. So
All right, let me share my screen and I'll pull it up and read it at the same time. I'll get you guys your faces off of there. In the first section, this action was brought before the Connecticut Board of Accountancy via an administrative complaint of the Connecticut Department of Consumer Protection pursuant to the provisions of Section 4-166 and 2280B of the Connecticut General Statutes. The administrative complaint charged Mark B. Bushka, respondent, with violating certain sections of the regulations and of the Connecticut state agencies. Respondent was given proper notice of an administrative hearing scheduled concerning alleged charges against him. On May 6, 2022, the board held a formal administrative hearing via Zoom online platform to hear factual allegations and testimony and take evidence related to the violations set forth in the administrative complaint regarding case number 2022-1. Attorney Kat Arsenault represented the department. Witnesses for the department included Douglas Ross, Tasha Scotland, special investigator. After notifying the department the day before the hearing that he would not attend the hearing, respondent did not attend. At said administrative hearing, and after a review of the entire record, board members rendered a decision to make the within finding of fact, conclusions of law, and orders to wit. Finding of fact.
Madam Board Member, if I may for just a moment. So this is the administrative decision. This is the final decision of the board. This isn't a motion. So what the board needs to do today is to decide whether or not to adopt the decision. Now, this decision appears to still be in draft form, considering the crossouts and the and also, some of the red line. I think what legally needs to be decided is, it appears from just the crossout that we're looking at right now. I don't know if the discussion was held on the record or if it was held with the AG's office as to why, for example, this regulation was struck from the decision. Making sure though that we know which findings of fact were determined to be compelling and proven at the hearing, and then also deciding based on your conversation with the Attorney General's office, you said that you wanted to make sure that there was some action if these orders weren't complied with. But it sounds like, because at the May 10th meeting, what was provided was a draft decision by Attorney Arsenal, which was subsequently amended. So if you can go through the amendments to be able to clarify why the decision was amended in those areas, I think that would be, you have to have that deliberation on the record. And then what really needs to be voted on is the orders at the end, and then any decision further to modify it based on saying, if they do not comply within, you'd mentioned 90 days earlier on, what happens? So is there, if possible, rather, because it is a 5-page decision, that the board should have reviewed after the May 10th meeting, since that's what they deliberated on. So if you can go through the changes, that might be the most efficient way to ensure that the board is all on the same page.
Okay, and we did discuss all these changes at the May 10th meeting, that and that's where they came in. So the changes would be under findings of fact, that number 9, that we removed the city of Torrington from the list of issues, that there was nothing that we heard that made that he was required to be a CPA for that. We just saw nothing that where he held himself out to be a CPA, that they may have thought he would. Correct me if I'm wrong on this, guys, that we thought that he, by holding himself out as a CPA other places, they may have thought he was a CPA, but we didn't see where that it was shown that he was holding himself out there to be a CPA.
Agreed.
That's correct. Discussed.
Under the conclusions of law, that as far as that he engaged in gross negligence, recklessness, or repeated act of negligence, we didn't feel as though these issues were proven that enough that we should include this in our list of issues. And I can't remember more if there were more details that we discussed. Under orders, we just added the wording that he remove the CPA from all locations. Just a wording change there. We did remove that that he report back. We were concerned about that being subject to FOI. Possibly we want to change that now, as far as that he gives us a listing of who he sent that to.
I would say just, this is Martha, in reading the Attorney General's advice email, I thought it might be advisable to ask for that, that list.
Okay.
So I don't know what people think. Frankly, when I seconded the motion, I didn't remember that we had eliminated this. I thought it was still in there, and that we were going to do that, and that we were bolstered by the AG's advice. So I would think it was appropriate.
Based on what we heard, I would think so too. Others?
This is
I
Pete.
agree.
I would agree.
Yeah, Carla agrees.
All right. Right. My word skills are pretty good, but I don't see my, oh, here I am. All right. And then number 5 is we had added that the respondent provide us an affidavit saying that there were no financial statements that were prepared during this time. There was
If I may request, by when?
All right.
When do they have to give this to you by?
We had said within 30 days of the final decision in order. And then we had made a change that $50,000 for the violations. What we had done was we had added them up. We took out the one for the thing that we were eliminating above. And then we just, instead of, we like to have it multiplied out to show how we were calculating these, and then we subtracted 10,000 was the best way that we thought. And I think when Kat provided this, that she just plugged some of these numbers, and we're accountants and we'd like to show the math.
So
Um,
I will
There's-
tell you that so that math doesn't actually add up to 50,000 anymore when you take out the 3, but moreover,
Not good.
they're not going to, for a decision, it should be the amount per violation. There's nothing in the statutes that contemplates a reduction. So I would recommend taking out that 10,000 reduction and just changing the numbers accordingly, so that in addition to the 3,000 that you are striking, that you adjust the numbers downward, so that if 50,000 is how you plan on, is the amount that you plan on finding them, that you adjust those
Well,
numbers.
you couldn't just put a bullet in that said everything to be capped at 50,000 total, and we could adjust the numbers individually, but
Also in that first sentence, it reads in wording 55,000 and then we
Right.
have friends. Yeah.
My thought would be that however it's done, whether the 10,000 is subtracted or not, I wouldn't acknowledge that there's a cap under the statute. There was some, a little bit of lack of clarity in that, I think, in the AG's advice. So as to whether it is in fact capped, that's the opinion of the AG, but I wouldn't acknowledge that, as allowed by state statute. In case in the future, there's a situation where we would prefer to do differently.
Also, I will say that generally our interpretation is for how we impose civil penalties is that cap amount. So it'll be $50,000 per violation. So when we have it, for example, in drug control or another area, it is $1,000 per violation. So each violation of law would be contemplated as a separate violation, and therefore, and again, this is we are not your attorneys, the AG is, and this is a conversation for them, but I would certainly agree that not memorializing that cap and decision would be.
Julianne, could I just clarify that? It sounds to me like the cap actually applies to each individual line item, if there is a cap, which we're not going to mention, as opposed to a total.
That's the department's interpretation for how we impose civil penalties when the department is serving as the hearing officer and adjudicator of a case. It is something that has been supported by our Attorney General upon appeal. And so even in the absence of a specific language that says per violation, it has been the way that our enforcement efforts have worked. Now, again, DCP is a different agency than the Board of Accountancy, but I'm just telling you that's how we have interpreted it for our purposes.
Well,
When you-
following the best, I'm sorry, go ahead, whoever.
I apologize. This is Martha Triplett. Julianne, you and I don't think have met. I was just wondering what your position is. I'm unfamiliar.
Oh, I'm sorry. So I'm Julianne Avalone. I am the legal director for the Department of Consumer Protection.
Okay,
So,
thank you.
Yes, I oversee our whole legal team.
Thank you.
So it sounds like based on prior experience, whether it be SBOE or DCP in total, it sounds like the clearest way to do this and not trigger anything would be just to make this column of equal $50,000,
Yeah,
correct?
is there any need to stipulate amounts per violation, or could you just remove those from the individuals and just say it's 50,000 for these violations, and would that be sufficient?
I will tell you from DCP, again, not providing you guys legal advice, but the reason that I will have oftentimes our hearing officers listed out is that upon appeal, if they are appealing the violation of specifically operating a public accounting firm without a permit, rather than
Okay,
using the DCPA designation, then if they win that specific appeal, they're going to get $11,000 knocked off their decision, not 50.
okay, understood.
So that, I mean, so there's an advantage to doing it that way, but I mean, it's a preference of the board. So
No, but I think I understand that if you list it out, you don't risk throwing out the whole thing for, okay.
So if we were to, if we still wanted to multiply this out times the number of years, that if we were to reduce these from 10 to 5, and my math being correct, that would equal 50,000. So is that how we want to do it? Is each one of these that were multiplied out times 9 years or 11 years, and then just bring these down to 5 each?
I'd be okay with that.
Yeah, I'd be okay with that.
Yeah.
Yes. This is Martha. Yes, I agree.
Yes, Carla.
I want to check my math. I don't. So we have 9 up here, 9 here, 11, 11, 5, and 5. I think that adds to 50.
Yeah, that does it.
All right.
Even without calculators, guys.
Yeah, well, can't see my fingers. And then we didn't change anything else. Actually, I don't want that.
Oops.
So
And I was just saying, I don't recall anything in the AG's advice that would change anything else.
all right. So we have a motion, we've had discussion. Do we have,
Well, yeah, actually, Julie, you said this wasn't technically a motion, so do we need to reclassify it as a voting on a finding?
so the question is, before the board, do you all agree? So the motion is to adopt the draft decision as written
Fine.
with technical
As
edits.
amended.
If you send this to us for we'll take out the red. We'll, change the proposed finals, just like take to final decision, but not make any substantive edits. So if you agree, if you vote to adopt this with technical edits to be made by the department, to be signed by the board chair, then that would be sufficient for us to move forward.
all right, so I'll withdraw my first motion. If
Can I
someone,
ask a question first? With regards to publicizing this, I know that on the state board website, we have decisions listed. Do we need to incorporate that into this order that we can list, that we listed on the website, or is that just an administrative function?
That's an administrative function. We, by law, have to post this.
Okay.
So we
All
don't post settlement agreements typically, because settlement agreements, we are able to incentivize people to settle by not publicly shaming them.
Okay.
But the final decisions we have to.
Okay.
I had one other question too. Within items 4 and 5, at least, it refers to through May 1, 2022. Is there some magic to that date versus bringing it to a more current date to where we are?
Julianne?
I believe, and I'm not the author of the decision, but the date of deliberation was May 10th. I believe that the understanding at that point was that this decision was probably to be voted on at that meeting. Since it wasn't, and it's now June 10th, I mean, there's really, I see no legal implication of changing it to June 10th. There's, because we are now at a later, as long as it is a date that is passed, I think it's 6 of one, half dozen of another. So that would be up to you.
But wasn't that what the date that the evidence presented was through? I mean, we don't know what he's been doing since the evidence was presented. So I don't see a reason to change it.
I think again, I was not there for the case. This is not, I'm not intimately involved with this, so I defer to your knowledge, but my cursory understanding of the issue was that he was performing work without being properly credentialed.
Correct.
And so he still wouldn't have been properly credentialed between May 1st and today. And so if he's continued to do work since the date of the hearing, if that is an additional concern to you, then that's where you might want to make sure that all of those people who are touched by his services are notified that, again, he wasn't properly credentialed. And that's a board decision to make.
I'm okay.
Well, yeah, we've got, 8.5 years here. Another 30 days, one way or the other, probably isn't material, I guess, as an auditor would say. So I can leave it or move it up wherever. Why don't we just leave it?
Are you all right with that, Tim?
Understanding Tim might cave on the other if you felt strongly.
No, I'm good. Thanks.
All right.
Okay.
So I guess I'll withdraw my first motion. And if Martha wants to withdraw the second.
I will withdraw the second of Marcia's first motion.
All right. And I will make a motion that we send this to the Department of Consumer Protection for their technical edits. Or approve it and send it to them.
I would second that.
Okay, we have a motion and a second. Any further discussion or questions, concerns? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, nay? And any abstention, since I couldn't see all the hands. Very good. I think we're done. And we have met the deadline, correct? Okay. Actually, I asked Julianne to be on because she and I had an excellent, I thought, probably blew too much out of her day, phone discussion late May, because we've apparently been operating sort of, I don't know, Frank and Kat have given us training wheels somewhat. And we will be changing the way we're operating within the DCP. But I thought it would be useful because I didn't understand. Martha may have memory from, she's been with the board for a long time, and under God knows how many times the boxes have moved around while she's been in service. But the way that DCP actually organizes how they do the investigations, et cetera, with their people, and how it fits in with the way we, as really a more independent board, perhaps, operate. Is that fair, Julianne?
Yes, I agree. Yep.
Okay.
Do you want me to kind of just do like broad brush?
Just a very broad brush, because some of the people here may have a little better knowledge of the background on how some of the state or, or DCP operates.
So as many of you probably know, we are an agency that's been cobbled together over time, that we have, taken on liquor control, a little over a decade ago, gaming 8-9 years ago. We took on Board of Accountancy about 5 years ago. There are all of these units that, like our drug control unit used to be in public health. One of the things that our commissioners have been tasked with over time is really figuring out a way to integrate all of these other divisions or agencies in and streamline them in a way that make sure that they're getting the full support of all of our different divisions. Board of Accountancy was one of these interesting transitions where it's the only one that I know of where we have taken on a full agency without any resources. Every time, whether it's drug control, liquor, gaming, there were humans that came over with it and, and files and systems so that there was some continuity of how, the entity was actually supported. You are one of 18 boards and commissions that DCP provides administrative support for. This is the only board and commission that hasn't ever really been integrated in with how our complaints are handled, our investigations, our legal services. Since there was a pretty rapid transition of Board of Accountancy over into DCP a little over 5 years ago, Frank Vernelli just kind of took it. Like he just became the person that was responsible for doing all the coordination. He certainly worked with our licensing division to get this done, but Frank was a supervisor in legal. Generally, none of our lawyers do anything remotely like what Frank was doing with Board of Accountancy. He just, he happened to be the chosen one at that time. So typically what happens with our boards is that we have a board administrator, and Brenda's going to be serving that role going forward. And one of the best things is actually Brenda's going to be consistently serving that role for all of our boards so that there is uniformity with how everything gets published, how the questions are coming in between boards, how they're structured in terms of an operation on a meeting basis. Then in terms of how the cases and complaints flow, when we do get complaints in, typically they go to our complaint center. We have a robust team of people that answer phones, answer emails, and do initial mediation of issues coming in from consumers. That was never fully integrated with, that was never really integrated with Board of Accountancy. Most of those complaints and issues would go straight to Frank and Kat. We don't have this in any other area. No one really has direct access from the outside to our lawyers because we are not lawyers for individual consumers. We are not lawyers for the general public. We are lawyers for the staff at DCP, for the state, for the commissioner. So one of the things that we've done since Frank's departure, and during the process of transitioning when he was retiring, is to integrate in with the complaint center so that all of our complaints are going to be handled online. So someone comes in, they have an issue, no matter what it is, they can go put in an online form. They will start to get automatic notifications. First of all, that their complaint was received, that someone will be reaching out with it to them. And then the complaint center has a very quick turnaround time for having a human from DCP reach out to the consumer, a human reaching out to the respondent to try to figure out whether or not they can facilitate a transition. Like, let's say the accountant's not getting back to them to give them their files. They say they're retiring, but there's just not that communication. Oftentimes the accountant gets an email from DCP, they're going to be a lot more responsive than they have been to that individual consumer. It's sad, but true. So a lot of that can be handled on a lower level. Not everything. So from there, the complaint center will do, and they send out 10-day letters. These are quick turnarounds. So generally from the time a complaint comes in, The complaint center, within 48 hours, oftentimes within 24, well, sorry, actually business days. Like within 2 business days, typically within 1 business day, they will have reached out to both the complainant and the respondent to get more information. A 10-day letter goes out to the respondent, says, give us your side of the story. We don't hear from you. They will send out another letter. And so they really have 2 times to respond. If they don't hear anything back from them, or if they get information back that shows this is more complicated, there's more to this story, maybe it involves a financial review, maybe it involves like a higher level of fraud that needs to be investigated. We have also now engaged our investigations division. So rather than it getting kicked to legal, because legal doesn't do investigations, what happened, we don't think about it just like a regular court case. At a regular court case, the attorney that's prosecuting the case doesn't then get on the witness stand to talk about the investigation they conducted. There's someone else, there's a third party that you call in as your witness who had firsthand information about what occurred and what information they gathered. That's what our investigations division does. They go out and they'll dig a bit more. The investigator that's been assigned to Kat is a woman named Christina who also does charitable solicitation work. And so she does a lot of financial review related to her charities work. So she actually already works with Kat. They have a good relationship. It was a blessing to have that person assigned to also be working on accountancy. So the case will be escalated to Christina. Christina will put together an investigative report. She will try to resolve it at her level. Maybe she'll be able to get a settlement. Maybe she'll be able to figure out, what, the respondent provided evidence. There really isn't anything to this case. That's fine. But let's assume things fail and she does her investigative report and there really are issues. That's when it gets kicked to Kat. And this is the same path it follows, whether we're talking about liquor, drug control, food, gaming. This is how our cases progress, because then we have the documentation that we need in order to show due process at a hearing and be able to have the most robust record. So from there, Kat will make a determination whether she thinks that she can settle the case, what additional information she may need from the investigator, or whether this is something that really needs to go to hearing. And goes to hearing, that's when you'll be triggered. Sometimes during that process, let's say there was like tampering with how they were doing deductions on municipal bonds based on like deductions from years ago. And both Kat and Christina are like, I have no idea what this means. Like this is just out of my wheelhouse. Like we're not CPAs. There's still absolutely situations where we're gonna call you guys for help and say, we really need to step down. This is just, we're out of our depth to figure out whether what this, CPA firm is telling us is normal is really how the industry operates. So still as part of like the investigatory part, we may be calling on the board for that expertise, but for some of the things like you're not registered properly, trying to think of another like really black and white case, but those, those will typically be handled just by the investigator and Kat. So what's been amazing is that we did really get the help of both the complaint center folks and our investigations team to step up and say, even though they're swamped and they've never done this stuff before, they're going to be able to lend that support. One of the interesting things about Board of Accountancy that we don't have in other areas is NASBA. I feel like the relationship between the board and NASBA is much closer than we have like for our liquor commission or for even like with our architects. They have national trade associations that they'll kind of get feedback from. They have a Connecticut chapter as well, but the relationship isn't as strong. There's not as much dialogue. And they don't offer as much training, especially like free conferences. So what at this point, it makes, having talked to Kat, it makes most sense that she's going to remain the primary contact with NASBA, because we need someone at the state that has, a state email address, that has, the ability to say, this is not subject to FOIA if they're having preliminary policy conversations. That just seems advantageous. And we'll see, as things move along, maybe there are things that should be going directly to the board chair rather than coming to, the state, but we're certainly open to that. So John was asking, so what are we really relying on to the board? And then also, today was for me and getting a better idea of what feedback you guys wanted from us and how we could best support you. But the role that typically our other boards are serving is like, how can we best serve the industry? So, I'll just pick on the architects again. Over the last few years, they focused on, there was issues with compliance with continuing education. So they actually modeled their continuing education fees off of Board of Accountancy. And they said, all right, rather than having to bring cases against these people, we're just going to say, you owe this late fee, and all right, you don't pay it in time, you can't renew next year until you get it. And as you know, your licenses are valuable. So even though someone might mess around during the whole year, they're not going to give up their profession to, avoid paying the late fee for your CEs. So they made a policy change to address that concern. We have the appraisers right now that there are some shifts in how they're looking at essentially reciprocity with other states and how to make things more standardized on a national basis. We defer to the board to give us the input on, what do you think this should look like? Do you think that there's a reason that Connecticut standards are significantly higher than what they're proposing on a national basis, and we should keep them at that elevated level? Or are we being unreasonable? Are we being strict without really having a public interest behind it? So it's those types of things that we do ask the board for their opinion on. And I think one thing that's important is, Chairman talked about it earlier on, about when you can speak to each other related to FOI. But, for example, if this was a thing related to the decision and Chairman, you wanted to speak to board member Marion and say, hey, we need to figure out how we're going to be screen sharing and voting on this decision later on. A one-to-one conversation is not going to be in violation of FOI. So it is when you have a group of you together that's going to trigger FOI restrictions, and then it's going to be deemed a public meeting. But I think we do have situations where other boards will also create subcommittees so that it's easier to get together to talk about specific issues if there are some. So I've just done a lot of talk. So I'm going to pause and then say, are there any questions for me at this point about that kind of setup? And then maybe we can move on to how can we best help you guys going?
I have a question. This is, and you mentioned architects. Are there any other professions that are under your department other than architects and CPAs? Oh,
yes. We have tons. So just in terms of the boards, so we have the professional engineers and land surveyors, we have architects, we have the fire sprinkler folks, we have the plumbers, electricians, we have auto glass, we have elevator technicians.
Landscape architect.
Landscape architects, yep. And so appraisal board, Liquor Commission, Distillate Board, Mobile Home Parks.
No, I know about those. I was, mobile home parks, electricians, plumbers, hairdressers, those kind of things. The original concern of the board, because I've been a board member for a long time, when moving under consumer protection is that this is a different thing. It's more like lawyers. We did not, the board was very wary about moving in to a house with electricians, hairdressers, mobile home parks. We felt it was inappropriate. So, I still have that concern. I thought that the setup with Frank and Kat was excellent. It sort of mirrored what we had previously with them sort of sharing duties as an executive director, which we used to have, who was excellent, and with the board's attorney. So, I do have concerns about proceeding in a cookie cutter standardized way with the other areas that you supervise.
I think one of the biggest things that I want to implement with this change, or reiterate, is that we are not your attorneys. That has to be very, very clear. So Kat is not your attorney. She is Michelle Siegel's attorney. She is Bob and Verinda's attorney, but she is not the board, because you are a separate agency and you're represented by the Office of the Attorney General. So Kat can't be providing you with legal advice. So, and neither can I. So that is one of the things that I have to be really careful about, is that there was kind of this emergency transition that happened when Board of Accountancy came over, but we support the board for administrative purposes only. And so unfortunately, the board doesn't have staff. That is something that, other boards in the state may have staff. This is something that certainly the legislature or governor's office could change to allocate executive director that works for the board. So for example, we have our Social Equity Council related to cannabis. They have an executive director. They actually have an executive director, a lawyer, a secretary, like they have a whole staff. But they have very specific statutory duties to, do workforce development, to do day-to-day tasks that require them to have staff. One of the things that, if you look at the statutory authority of the board, it is similar to how our other boards work, in terms of, yes, there's certain things that you have to approve related to licensure, but typically it's more of a policy. Like, we are relying on your expertise. We need you guys to set the tone for where this industry goes and how we should be amending our operations to ensure we're best suiting the needs of these firms and individuals. And the complaint process and the investigation process is not a function that rests with the board, which is why we wanted to be able to standardize it within our area, because Kat, this is one of the many areas she oversees. She also, like I mentioned before, does charities. She does, oversees health club cases. She oversees, as a hearing officer, a myriad of other issues, because she serves as a hearing officer for, almost anything that comes up. So this is, I've got to make sure that when it comes to her time, she's serving in a legal capacity.
Yeah, I was surprised at how much Kat had on her plate when we went over that. But you did hit on a sore point, because you did mention we don't have staff, and I think we're the only Board of Accountancy in the nation that doesn't have an independent staff. We're the only Board of Accountancy in the nation that, despite having by far the highest fees in the nation by a factor of 3 or 6 times the average, that we don't have a budget for a staff, which is why I think that you have that, that pushback on this. We are really an outlier, and when you say the governor and the legislature could fix that, you're absolutely right. They could either provide true staff or they can give us the budget to hire true staff. But we don't have that.
And
So-
that's, yeah, and that's something that, oftentimes what we find is, and, maybe if you guys have a great relationship with NASBA, I mean, that could certainly be an area to look at as well. But the CTCPA, we find that generally with our other boards, it's working with your groups that already have lobbyists. So rather than starting from scratch and just like having this email campaign with the legislator in the area in which you live, which I'm not knocking, like that is a good place to start as well. But having a lobbyist through a trade association who's at the legislature, who knows which people to speak to get a bill raised, that is a good way to make these changes. Because one of the things that I'll tell you falls on deaf ears with us is that, whenever every session we'll go to the legislature and be like, we don't have enough people, we don't have, you keep on giving us subject matter, we don't have enough resources. And they say, yeah, that's great. We get it, but we're also in line with every other state agency. So oftentimes it falls on deaf ears from us.
I will add that I believe you are short 100 positions right now.
So painful. I think we dropped below 100 last.
That's okay. Cat can pick up some more, right?
Right. Just 5 or 6 more areas of law. But one of the things that you have is this argument saying we have some of the highest fees, we bring all this money in, can we dedicate just the renewal fees, or like whatever the argument is, just this amount, or just the late fees? Can we have the late fees go into a dedicated account that will then be able to pay for a staff? So you're not saying we need money from the general fund. You'll say,
well, no,
pay for ourselves.
this actually goes straight to the general fund, and as I remember, we had a in conforming Connecticut regulations to national. One thing got held up because somebody in the legislature decided, with incorrect math, it turned out, that it would cost the general fund like $20,000 a year, and therefore it could not be considered. But it turned out it actually would have gained the general fund a larger amount per year. But that is the kind of thinking that is out there. This is so. I won't push that anymore because I don't like tilting windmills.
But the thing is that if so I don't go to these conferences. Like one of the things that, we've continued to do is that Kat goes to these NASBA conferences. I am aware of the fact that there are other boards that have like teams of people that work for them, that, have staff just for the boards. Having someone though, that is like an individual that works for the Board of Accountancy, that is that subject matter expert that can maybe do, it's hard for me to even speak to what types of policy or operational shifts the industry may need going forward, or what's on the horizon for accountancy changes. But, if you think that that's something that is a full-time job for someone, then it's worth going to, the legislature or the governor's office and saying, look, everyone else has it. Here's what this individual does. Here's why we need this. I think the question that would need to be discussed and solidified by the board is, what would that person do?
Can I just interject a question, which is it's a segue really, and ask Martha or whoever knows, how is the supervision of the legal profession set up through the state of Connecticut administrative apparatus? Martha, do you know?
I don't really, Carla. I just know that, we have an independent agent that's not under consumer protection with other types of avocations and vocations. It's separate. So, and it's, I just know in the old, when there was, discussion of change, everybody on the old board wanted it to be more like the oversight of lawyers as opposed to joining with other professions and jobs that maybe were very disparate and had different needs and different goals, I guess. So.
My Haskins and Sells partner in charge back in the 70s told his kids that he didn't want them to become CPAs. He wanted them to become lawyers because, quote, they make the rules.
Yeah.
So anyway, thank you very much, Julianne. I really appreciate it. I think, the answer right now is we work with what we have, and you've given us some good feedback in how things will be working and how we could do with it. Verinda, could you share your contact information with us?
Absolutely. My contact information is Verinda, V as in Victor, ERIND as in David, Birdsong, just like it sounds, bird and song @ct.gov. And certainly on the minutes, I can provide
That'd be great.
more information in terms of, I'm located at 450 Columbus. But I will provide more information that will be included in the minutes so that you can contact
And
me directly.
eventually we'll get back there.
Absolutely.
Meetings.
At some point, at some juncture.
And Bob, will we still be working through you for setting up agenda items, or we'll be working with Verinda?
Well,
For
at
the-
this,
Yeah.
yeah, at this time, it's still in the hands of Bob. I'm shadowing probably about 12 boards. And then we will begin the transition process, and you'll be notified when I'll be taking over the helm. But Bob and I will be working together closely. He'll be training me, and I will, I have already begun some centralization processes, but that is something in the near future, not at this time. So please continue as you have been until noticed. Okay, that would be great. That makes it easier for you and everyone not to have any shifts quickly.
Okay, thank you.
I have a question. Wondering with the other boards that have the Attorney General as their attorney, do they have an Attorney General representative at all of their meetings?
They do not. So the Attorney Generals only, they only go to their meetings upon request. So, for example, like the Pharmacy Commission has, if they have a hearing, they may not even have, so the AAG won't even attend the hearing unless it's requested by the board chair or someone on the board. Typically it's the board chair, but.
Yeah, that's what I did years ago but we had a board attorney. So we had the executive director, we had the board attorney, there was a couple of different admin people. There were a lot of staff members involved, but the main ones at the meeting, to give input were the executive director, who was, the NASBA conduit and just the general overseer, and then the attorney. And then if there was going to be a hearing or a special issue, we might have an attorney from the Attorney General's office attend the meeting. So how do you envision this going forward as to who's going to be attending our meetings from the Department of Consumer Protection? Would that be Kat?
Well, only if there's a legal issue. So unless there's an area of law that we need to present, or if we are going to be presenting on something like Kat wants to propose or the department wants to propose a change to the regulations, or, and really, so it's a legal issue, Kat wouldn't attend. Typically, we don't have lawyers, because since we don't provide legal support to the board. We don't send lawyers to our board meetings. Again, unless there's a specific reason. So it would be the board chairs their own meeting and discusses policy issues and then lets the department know when there's an action that needs to be taken. Now, and when Kat needs to sign off on something, or when, let's say if there's a licensing issue or investigative issue, the licensing division or investigative division may attend if they need approval or feedback on something. But no, you should not expect that a DCP attorney would be at each
If I could
meeting.
interject there, one, we may not know that a legal issue will come up. And two, we usually have to keep track meeting to meeting on what's going on with regulations, et cetera, that are going through the process. We have no way to do that now. As much as we treasure our close relationship with the Connecticut Society, we're not going to do that through their lobbyists.
That's right.
Well, I mean, I can tell you
We
that,
shouldn't.
unfortunately, have you seen, regs move extraordinarily slowly. So when it comes to regs, we don't have any accountancy regs pending in the system, nor am I aware of any right now that are, coming in imminently. So, when new regs be proposed, whether they're being initiated from the Board of Accountancy or initiated by the department, they would be certainly a subject of discussion with the board. This is not something we would never bring up, liquor regulations or engineering regulations without checking with the appropriate board and getting their expertise. Like, that is why our boards exist, is to be able to give us that guidance. But then from there, department puts them in, and typically it's a waiting game for 6 months, and then we'll tell the board, oh, look, they're going to public comment. But through that, one of the things that we can certainly do is, knowing that you meet quarterly, if that's something that's on the agenda, then generally Verinda would say, is there any update with regs? It's an action item. And we would say, there's no update with regs. And we're not back in session until January. And so there's no statutory updates. So it's one of these things where at every meeting, there's not going to be that update. And so, yeah, that's
The issue is that because of our close relationship with NASBA and all the changes that have occurred in the national accounting profession in recent years, a lot of it because of technology or whatever, that we may be in a position where we're not just talking about lobbying or regs, but we're talking about proposed legislation. So we have to have a conduit to be able to have input into that, particularly when they're changing national practice. And that has to be timed to when the General Assembly is getting ready and is meeting.
That is,
Yeah.
the timing is important. And one of the things I did want to mention before we end this is we've got a huge amount of changes that are going to be coming down the pipeline, particularly with CPA evolution. And I wanted to get everybody thinking so that we could start pulling in presentations, et cetera, because some of this stuff I think is going to be very significant changes and will require a lot of consideration as to its effect on protection of the public. And if we're only meeting, gone from once a month to once every other month, and we stall at some point because we don't have that sort of assistance, we'll never make it, we'll never get it in on time. And given the totally sclerotic nature, once again, we're first in the nation in being able to get a regulation approved in Connecticut, and first in the longest, unfortunately. Although I will give DCP a lot of credit for having sped that up in our cleanup.
There's no reason that you guys have to meet quarterly. You could meet weekly if you wanted. And this is something where we found that unfortunately there wasn't necessarily with some of the other boards enough substance that they needed to meet that often. So we generally scheduled things quarterly, and the idea being that if a board needed to meet more regularly, they would meet more regularly. You can absolutely do this, and especially if you know that there's something coming down the pike where you're going to want legislative changes. The key here is, it sounds like as a board on a policy level, you need to discuss what changes you want. What changes do you think are going to be critical to move forward in legislation? And
We
that's
understand
something
that.
So do you have a list? Do you have like a written list of what the changes you want to propose for legislative amendments?
Right now, that list is changing weekly, and yes.
So it's going to be important to solidify that soon. I'm actually just having a conversation with someone about the appraisal board this morning about saying that this is going to be something that you need to have to us really by mid-August. So typically what happens is that, we have a firm deadline. By October 1st, everything, our entire legislative package with all of the wording, everything needs to be submitted to the governor's office, like no later than October 1st. However, I think I mentioned this to John the other day. We have another special deadline because I'm due to have a baby in the end of September. So we're speeding up our legislative deadline this year because I need to have everything written realistically by September 1st, because all of my other children have listened to the doctor and they have come generally when they are due, but we all know that children don't always listen. So I'm preparing as if I may go out on September 1st. So I need everything in August so that we can have our package ready. Because what I need at that point is I need why we're making the change, I need what the specific language is going to be, and I'd want to make sure that we're in agreement on that language with the board. And then from there, what's the fiscal impact? Does it mean that there's going to be a reduction in fees? There's going to be an increase in fees? Is it going to mean that there's no fee changes to firms or individuals? However, because of the additional courses they're going to have to take, it's going to cost them, X hundreds of dollars more to get their credential. Like, that's the kind of stuff we have to talk through. So if you guys have a list now, and let's say there are 10 items, and of those 10 items, 2 of them are changing, and like you're still not sure, okay, is it, who reviews this type of application, or this number of CEs should be required, we can still start working on the other 8. The earlier you give us notice of statutory changes, the better. Unfortunately, every year we start working on our next year's legislative package a month after session ends. It is kind of demoralizing to us, I'm not gonna lie. Like, it just feels like we're perpetually in session. But we have to do this in order to stay ahead of the game and make sure that when we do propose legislation, there's a considered document that goes through. That's what makes us so successful at the legislature every year, is making sure that we think through every word and that we get buy-in from our partners. So making sure that the board, traditionally how we do things, is that we will work with the board first to make sure we agree on language, but then we want to make sure that we have like CTCPA that's also on board, because what we don't want to do, submit this into the governor's office, get all the approval, a bill's raised, and then the industry freaks out and we didn't see it coming.
Oh, neither of us. We work pretty closely with the Connecticut Society because we found that they have a very strong protection of the public. viewpoint also, so that there's a lot of one great working relationship.
That's fabulous. And that's really helpful when it
So,
comes to pushing things through.
If I can just warn everybody that we're going to have a pretty full agenda on July 5th. So anybody has anything to contribute to that, please get it to Bob as soon as possible.
Hi, good morning. This is Kat. Julian, I'm so glad you mentioned that the board can meet as often as they want, and we all miss Frank so much. And you know, you used to go through Frank for everything. And you know, Julian, if you can make it clear that the board doesn't need to go through me, right? You can go straight to the coordinator, and Frank used to take care of everything, and it doesn't have to be through me. But I do anticipate to be there at most meetings because, you know, I still have to present the request for extension of CPEs and extend. We have a lot of requests all the time. So I do expect to be at every meeting.
Well, that answers my question, because I thought, Kat, how are we going to do this without you? Because you tell us what the issues are and who's looking for our action. So thank you. I didn't get that.
Oh, no, I won't be telling you issues on everything, as Julianne said, you know. So
Understood.
Right, but the requests, they come to us, and I see no other way than, you know, me presenting the request for extensions. But certain things, for example, if NASPA, I know that most of the time NASPA will go to the board directly on issues. And Frank used to summarize and would tee that up, but you don't need me to do that. A lot of times, Frank didn't even get that. I believe it went to the boards, and then the board members would bring it to Frank's attention, and he would coordinate. And you know, if something that comes from the board, from NASPA directly to me, and only me, then I would certainly present it to the board. But a lot of times that is not the case.
And then when it comes to the legislative stuff, you know, in terms of drafting, you know, if you, so you're meeting in the beginning of July. I think if it's possible at that meeting that you can solidify the legislative changes that you'd want to request, then maybe if we could have another meeting where I can be there either at the end of July or the beginning of August, where we can talk about like firming up what the agenda would be and make sure that maybe the CTCPA is at that end of July or early August meeting, to make sure that, you know, we're putting something together. Because what I can have is after the July 5th meeting, I think you said July 5th, right? Okay, so after the July 5th meeting,
Yes.
you know, I'll have the minutes from there. So I'll be able to see generally what you guys are looking for and be able to figure out, you know, how that would fit into what we're looking to do.
I will circulate through Bob the request for availability early August, because I'm not sure that we're even going to have. I mean, I have a feeling that a lot of this stuff that was due this summer is going to end up in the fall and too late. But that's as things are.
But
Not that comes from us.
But this is, so here's the key though, is that our legislative package to get things as a governor's bill needs to be in no later than October 1st. However, once a bill is raised, like, so, you know, we'll see this especially always with like drugs and liquor. They're the traditional ones that always get the add-ons. We have a bill that's raised related to one of these subjects. It's a governor's bill. And then during session, 100 things get added to it. So whether it's through the public hearing process, whether it's just through lobbying to other legislators to get things added on, or, you know, the CTCPA has their relationships with folks, either have a separate bill raised or say, you know, this is a great bill. However, since this initial bill went in, we have all of this additional information. We would like an amendment to the bill to incorporate these standards. So they can do, it is harder, like we can't really initiate, we can't easily initiate amendments to our own bills. because the governor's office is going to say, no, we asked you for your opinion. You had your chance to give it to us. And like, that's, you had to do that by October 1st. However, the board, the industry associations can modify the bills as they go along through the process, because session doesn't start until the second Tuesday or Wednesday in January.
January.
Okay, thank you.
So yeah, if there's only,
Appreciate
like
that.
I said, I'm just assume that there's 10 issues. If at the next meeting, you know that even if it's only 3 of the 10 are definite things that you're going to want to address, then bring those up and let's get language for those 3. And then the rest we can, work out as things go along. If realistically you're not going to have all of the information you need until November, it's not dead. It doesn't mean that you can't do anything until 2024. It just means we have to go a different path.
What you're saying is we could even have the broad outline of proposed legislation in by your deadline of September. And then as the legislative process moved forward in the General Assembly, we could do a potentially substitute language to reflect new developments.
Yes, but it either have to be kind of through the board's relationships with, legislative officials or through the CTCPA.
Right.
And so, but yes, yeah, they can, bills rarely look exactly the same way when we put them in and then when they're voted on at the end. So we always pray that they look the same way, but they rarely do.
That's true.
Well, everybody, I'm going to try to get an update, get Dan Dustin or something to come on the 5th. I have a feeling that either we're going to be very, very busy, or just as likely it's going to be a moot point, because I have a feeling that some of these things aren't at the upper level at the AICPA, et cetera, just aren't going to happen in time. So anyway, are there any other questions or whatever? I was trying to hold everybody to an hour for a special meeting. That never works. So, but any items of business that anybody would, and I'll try to get my granddaughter to be quiet in the background.
I really
Okay.
appreciate your time. I know that there have been a lot of shifts, and I don't want you to think I'm coming in and saying, like you're on your own, sink or swim. We're changing the structure here, and if this goes along and you want to talk to us about like different paths of how you may be able to petition to get a staff member for your agency, like we can point you in the right direction of other models where boards have been able to do this. It's not anything else we have at DCP, but that doesn't mean that there's not other models in the state, and especially that there are clearly other models in the country. So it's just going to be a matter of, I think, really articulating what that person's role would be, and maybe seeing in the meantime how best you might like want us to be able to update you guys on things. And so, we really are here to help. We're not just doing a mic drop and fading into the background.
Okay. Any other comments, questions? Would anybody like to bring any new business?
Whoa, big temperature.
Okay,
Bubblegum
give it
medicine?
up. The 2-year-old doesn't want to get a pretend shot, so I'll entertain a moment to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Motion. Do we have a second?
Yeah, Tim.
Okay. Very good. Thank you, everybody, for your time, and thank you particularly, Marcia, for for tracking this through and keeping up on the questions from May, and all in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? And I assume there's no abstentions to that one. So thank you, everybody, and
Yeah.
we'll see you all on July 5th.
Thank you.
Thank you. Have a great day.